Right, folks, I'm back for the final lesson, a very short one, not too long, on Katherine Mansfield, the singing lesson. And I just can't help but bring to you an image of Katherine Mansfield and a quote which I find very poignant. Could we change our attitude, we should not only see life differently, but life itself would come to be different. I read it once more. Could we change our attitude? Just think about Miss Meadows. We should not only see life differently, but life itself would come to be different. Yes, I of course accept that there was an external object that came in the form of a telegram that set right all the misunderstandings between Basil and Miss Meadows. But as soon as the telegram came, there was a change of attitude, and that made her see not only see life differently, but life itself became different. So our positivity, our optimism, our imagination, and our never say die attitude can actually uh, let us see the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow and not just the thunder and lightning. Yes. So I had to show you this. I'm sure you can relate this quote of Katherine Mansfield to the very story that we have done. Okay, now just give me a second. Why don't you get your text? Because I will now move on to the questions that we are going to work on just now and discuss. Right now, this is from the ISC paper of 2019. It was tested last year. So the question was, with close reference to the short story, The Singing Lesson, describe how the lesson progresses and becomes an echo of Miss Meadows' feelings. So how the lesson progresses and becomes an echo of Miss Meadows' feelings. So, right, I mean, you might think, oh, here we have to write the whole story. No, sorry. So for every question, you have to write more or less what you find in the story. But in this, how do you begin? You begin with the setting, right? So where is Miss Meadows? What is her role in this story? Okay, so the school, the ambience, the music teacher, the singing lesson, okay, and how the singing lesson opens, and why does it open the way it opens, and then the interruption of the telegram coming in, and when she comes back, it's like an intermission. And like when a movie, the first part is so different from the second part. So after the intermission, the second part of the singing lesson is a totally different show altogether. And again, like I said, if you remember what I have mentioned to you in the last lesson that I was doing, the echo of Miss Meadows' feelings. So everything that you see outside, the exterior, is a projection of all her thoughts within. So when there is pain and gloom and despair, the lesson is different based on the letter that she received. And then when the happy telegram comes in, when everything is status quo, no misunderstandings, there is no regret and disgust is flown out of the window, you have joy and hope and happiness and fulfillment, right? So that is your general approach to the answer. Now, if you move to the next one, the next question that we have here, explore. I couldn't resist an alliteration while I was making the question. So I think it's a nice question. Explore the coming together of music Moods and Miss Meadows. In Katherine Mansfield's story, The Singing Lesson. Music, moods, and Miss Meadows. Wonderful alliterative phrase, isn't it? Yeah. So isn't I mean, can you see of this story being anything else but this? So you have the central character, Miss Meadows. The story, which is a reflection of her moods, yes, and the moods which are being reflected in the music class. So that's how you will bring the three aspects together. The story is about Miss Meadows. The moods, the first phase, and the impact on the music lesson, the second phase of the mood and the impact of the music lesson. In between comes what happens to Miss Meadows and her mood and her music because of external circumstances. The two external circumstances that we shall keep in mind: first, the letter and the breaking up, yes, the breakup that's been suggested by Basil, and the second, the telegram, and where there is an apology and everything is back to what she had thought it was earlier. They are back to being engaged, so she does not have to leave school, she does not have to hide herself from the embarrassment. So music, moods, and Miss Meadows. Again, you begin with the importance of these three in the setting with Miss Meadows. You could begin with Miss Meadows as the central character. It's her mood and how it impacts the music because it is a singing lesson, and the effect of the singing lesson, effect of her mood on the singing lesson that is pictured in the story. Right? Okay? Understood? The next question. I got this in parts, so sorry for this. This is The Singing Lesson by Katherine Mansfield can be called a story in communication. I had talked about this while I was doing the previous lesson. In this context, discuss the first part, your understanding of Miss Meadows when she is introduced, and her interaction with the class in the beginning. Very precise. Remember, when you have this three-part question, they are very precise. So please read all the three parts. In case there is a chance of an overlap, you should be very careful in planning it, right? So if the first part is understanding of Miss Meadows when she's introduced in the beginning, and the interaction with the class in the beginning, right? Second part is the contents of the two pieces of communication that Miss Meadows receives from Basil and a reaction only to the second one. Please be mindful. Don't waste your time writing about her reaction to the first and second, because her reaction to the first, mind you, is her interaction with her class in the beginning, which is a part of the first question. Right? Got it? The first part of this question. And then what happens with the third? Miss Meadows and a brief interaction with two of her colleagues, the science teacher, the beginning, and the headmistress at the end. Very clear cut. Now, this question there is no overlap. You're not going to talk about the science teacher in the first part, and you're not going to talk about the headmistress and the details in the second part. You're only going to talk about the telegram, the contents of the telegram, and the change that takes place, right? Got it? So let's go back to the first. Your understanding of Miss Meadows when she's introduced. So, the opening lines, that's why I said it's very, very clear that you have to be absolutely certain of the opening lines of the story when it says very, very clearly that it is despair, cold, sharp, buried deep in her heart like a wicked knife. Right? So, as she's walking down, the knife in her heart is like the baton in her hand. The pain in her heart is like the cold corridors that she's walking through. The grimace on her face is the reflection of the utter devastated state that she is in because of the letter that she has received, right? That's all you write about the letter. Remember, the letter comes again. And her interaction with the class in the beginning. How she does not look at the yellow chrysanthemum. How she asks the students to turn to page number 14. So there is a change of song. How she is not in the singing at all. Her mind is with other thoughts while the singing has become a chore. She just keeps on going at the singing like a mechanical piece of work. There is no heart in the singing. Remember the silence, and meat is in a wax. So, someone who's bleeding to death, pierced heart to heart by, yes. So there's somebody who's bleeding to death. Somebody is so pained, utter hopelessness, and that kind of mood is sort of communicated to the children, and so they are tense. They are horrified. Mary is in tears because her teacher has not acknowledged the rose the chrysanthemum that was presented to her. So they turn to page 32. Yes, and then because those were the instructions she had got. But what does Miss Meadows say? No, turn to page 14. Yes, so page 14, and Mary is taken aback because those were not the instructions given to her. And then she's raising the baton, tapping the music twice. It goes on like a mechanical piece of work. There is no joy in it because every note, every tone is not music. It is a sob, it is a groan, it is a sigh. I quote from page 93, and that's how you will work on this answer, right? Interaction with the class. Remember, we are not going into details about the letter. Once in a while, you can bring in. But the words of the song, definitely. Fast are too fast, the roses of pleasure, soon autumn yields into winter drear. Fleetly are fleetly music's gay measure, passes by from the listening ear. Definitely the quote from the song. Important, right? Beginning. All right. Then then we come to the next part. The contents of the two pieces of communication. It's a direct question. So you write about the letter exactly. Remember the disgust, cut, and regret. Focus on that. You need to quote from the letter. And the second is the telegram. You're not mentioning the role of the headmistress here. You're only focusing and her reactions to that. So the second part, the joy, the happiness, coming back, oh lovely chrysanthemum, picking up the flower, the color motif is recognized. There is a joy in her step, so there's joy in music. Why 14? Get back to 32, which was the original plan. And then you can quote the second song. We come here today with flowers overladen with baskets of fruit and ribbons to boot to congratulate. It's joy, it's happiness, which is back into her life, a reflection of her mood, right? And then finally, this is very direct again, simple. First with the science teacher, who is oozing of sweetness and honey and smiles and in contrast. So both these characters in contrast to Miss Meadows, and her interaction with the headmistress and the telegram, because headmistress is quite peeved with the fact that it was not a telegram which was giving a bad news, because that's why she was interrupted. Miss Meadows was interrupted in a class. She was brought out of her class thinking that it was some kind of a bad news which had to be given immediately. But it wasn't, right? And so the headmistress, Miss White, puts her in place and said, sorry, please remember the teachers are not supposed to receive any telegram except that gives us bad news. And also reminds her, don't you have 15 minutes of your class left? Which is a clear hint, get back to class immediately. So the authoritative tone of the headmistress, once she realizes that the telegram is not something that is conveying something very urgent from her perspective, but from our perspective, we are looking at Miss Meadows, and you really know how important this telegram has been for not just for that moment, definitely for that moment, because the singing lesson becomes a joyous affair when she gets back, but also if you keep her entire life perspective in front of us, right? Got it? Clear? Okay. So I worked on these questions. They are there on the, and they'll be there on the video for you. So I really hope that you would work on these questions, go through the story once more, work on the questions, and please enjoy Katherine Mansfield. Like people like Katherine Mansfield, D.H. Lawrence, O. Henry, uh, probably Tolstoy to a certain extent, Oscar Wilde. There are many, many more, but you won't get to read many such stories ever, right? Okay, so till we meet again, please go through singing lesson and go through the questions, try working on any one of them, more or less remember the approach, 5 or 6 quotes, please. Those in parts, total it should be like each part you could have 2 quotes, that'll be fine. So work on some one of them, choose whichever suits you, because more or less you should have a feel of the answer. And I shall see you again, probably with some poetry, right? Take care, enjoy, have a great weekend.